Hey, welcome to Whitecap, the Canadian Sailing Podcast. I'm Dave Krypton, longtime dinghy sailor and passionate fan of sailing in Canada. Today on the podcast, I'd like to welcome offshore double-handed sailor and 2023 Rolex Canadian Sailor of the Year, Melodie Schaffer, to the show. Melodie, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's just an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So how did it feel to start off? How did it feel to win that award?
I was blown away, absolutely honored beyond belief. There were so many great sailors in Canada, and so to be awarded it was truly, I was grateful and thrilled.
That's great. No, it's really such a long list of incredible sailors to be on the same page with. So the list of big-time offshore events that you've been involved with includes the RORC Caribbean 600, the Fastnet, Transat Jacques Vabre, Clipper Around the World race, and others. But the biggest recognition, and why you're on the show now, is from the Globe 40, racing your boat, Whiskey Jack, on a 35,000-mile, 8-leg, double-handed competition on the new designed Class 40s. 7 teams took part in the 175-day event, which started in Morocco, went through Cape Verde, Mauritius, New Zealand, French Polynesia, Argentina, Brazil, and Grenada, ultimately ending up in France. So, before we dive into your story, could you just name the different partners you had in this race so we can give them their due all at once?
Absolutely. I went into this race planning on having, one skipper the whole way, and I ended up building it up as I went along for different reasons, and I am grateful to all of them. So it is Gary Jakes, leg 1, Michael Reiking, leg 2, leg 3 was Geronimo Santos, leg 4 was Rob Phillips, and then it was, what am I up to? Paul Stapfold for leg 5, and then Tom Pierce for leg 6, 7, 8.
Excellent. Well, we could have a round table with them sometime down the road. So I start this out with a kind of short answer section.
Yep.
So you ready for that?
Go for it. All set.
Okay. Favorite place you've ever sailed?
Ooh, favorite place I've ever sailed. Wow, you're like throwing a tough one at me to begin with. Honestly, no, for me, it's like the middle of the ocean is my favorite place to ever sail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Any particular ocean or any of them?
No, any of them. I mean, probably not the Atlantic so much. I think I prefer I love the Southern Ocean, even though it's a little bit daunting. The Atlantic can be tricky at times, honestly. It's tougher than you realize.
Wow. Well, that's the best answer I've had in 30 podcasts for sure. That's better than Carta or, these other places. Where is the Rolex you won from Canada? Rolex
It's on my wrist right now.
Yeah.
I'm wearing it very proudly. My fitness watch is off and my Rolex is on for the next little while when I get sailing again, I'll have to put the Rolex away. But for now, I am proudly wearing it.
Do you have a sailing hero?
Do I have a sailing hero? You know what? I'm not going to say as far as like a really big name. I mean, Dee Cafferty, I could say. Pip Hare, I could say. Certainly amazing women out there sailing. But I think offshore racing has taught me that it's not always like who wins the race that is the best person or it's had the should be recognized the most, because when you're offshore, you're on your own for the most and you are dealing with your own situation. And I think it's sort of all those small moments. So a lot of some of the sailors I've been with, how we handled situations or what I learned from them, really, really respect them for that.
Right. Sure. One question I usually ask, I've almost entirely had dinghy sailors on this podcast. You and Scott Shoy are, I think, my only offshore sailors.
Yeah.
And the question is always what percentage, how important is the start of a race? So a dinghy race, as I'm sure you know, is about 70 or 80%. But in terms of an offshore race, how important is the start?
It does not matter at all. I mean, you don't want to be early because there's normally a pretty significant time penalty if you're early. After that, it does not matter. I mean, when you're out there for 5 days or 35 days, if you're even, 10 minutes late for the start, it doesn't matter.
So you don't get bummed out, because I often think about that. I haven't done I did one overnight race and just thinking of the start, like it's not going to matter because by the end of this we're going to be whatever, an hour apart, 2 hours apart. But still, it's kind of a bummer if somebody pulls out in front of you, isn't it? Or you just it doesn't matter.
It used to when I first went. I first got into offshore, and I did a race in 2017. Then I went back in 2018, the Caribbean 600. And I grew up racing really pretty seriously, and dinghies, and then onto keelboats. And I was always helm or tactician, so the start was huge for me. And my first couple offshore races, I was bummed out. I was like, come on, like we should be closer, we should be pushing. And I had to learn that, all right, offshore, it's a different approach to sailing.
Right. In terms of Canada, which spots would you prefer? Like when I'm putting it up as Lake Ontario, Pacific side, or Atlantic side of Canada.
What, for sailing? Um,
Yeah, for sailing. Yeah.
Listen, I've raced. I've not sailed out of the west coast of Canada, so I can't even comment on that. I love Lake Ontario, but I have to say I have been around the island hundreds of time in my life because, I raced really seriously, and then I was, settled into family life, and we would take friends out sailing. And what do you do every weekend? You go around the island, or you go just onto the lake and do your little bit of a race, and then come back. Um, the East Coast, I think, is quite magical. I raced out there a bunch when I was on the Ontario team, and it is. I love the East Coast.
Awesome. I'm from New Brunswick,
Oh, there we go.
so
Yeah, cool.
that's
Was
the
it
connection there. I
10?
love sailing
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, me too.
Um, Dream race or regatta you'd like to sail in?
Well, I'm planning on doing the next round the world race, so that's what I'm gunning for right now. My very favorite race always is the Caribbean 600 race. So I would love to go and do it with my boat. If I debated about taking my boat down there this year for it, and I decided not to. It made sense logistically to not do it. I would love to go and race that race on Whiskey Jack.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's move on then to tell me about how you started sailing and what your youth sailing experience was like.
Sure. So I grew up at RCYC, and we joined when I was a young kid. I was, I think, 7 or something when we joined. So I started with the ankle biter program there, which was the Optimus. And back then it was only one person per boat. So you really were sailing the boat. I know now they put 2 or 3 kids in, and you're not doing it all. So, and then I went to junior club. And in junior club, at the first few years sailing, I mean, I enjoyed it, and I sort of got my levels pretty quick. And it wasn't until racing division that I really got truly captured with sailing. Like I had such an amazing group of uh, sailors friends in my racing division. It was Martha Henderson, Richard Clark, Tony Bowman, like Warren Jones. There were all these people that have all had great success in sailing, and I was really lucky that that was who I was training with. So I did the junior club, and then I was on the Ontario team for a couple of years. And like so many people, I, was aspiring for the Olympics. I wanted to go and chase that dream. I went from laser twos to Bada 470 and was training hard for that. And it didn't pan out. And then I sort of shifted into, I was also at university, did an engineering degree, and then I did a biomedical engineering degree. And life sort of kicks in, like you sort of shift gears and say, okay, well now I'll focus on my career, and that's what I did. I kept racing, keelboats, lots, J105s, 8 meters, sharks, CNC 34s, a whole gambit of boats. And I was helm or tactician or foredeck. I love foredeck. I love foredeck. And I bought an International 14 when I sort of stopped my Olympic campaign, when I took a step away from the 470. And that was a blast. Like to be helming and trapezing, like the best thing ever.
Right. Right. Wow. Um, that's so much to go through there. Who were you sailing with in 470s?
Yeah, Christine Carter. So I met her the very first day of junior club. So
Oh wow.
I had gone through, you're trying different. I had a partner, Julie Shaw from junior club. We raced together. We were really, really good. But again, you both have to be at the same point. You both have to either have the time to be able to do the racing. And at that time, back in the day, it wasn't as organized as it is now. And, when I bought my Laser 2 and when I bought the 470, it was with my own money. I'm organizing all the events you're going to. There wasn't it wasn't as well developed as it is now as far as support. So, yeah, so I had Julie Shaw and then another teammate, Tanya, and then I switched to Christine Carter. For each type of boat, I had a
Okay.
different teammate.
All right, so quick requiem for the Laser 2 because I had one too. We raced them really seriously from like 1984 through 1989. We did Canada Games
Yes,
in Saskatoon. And wow, we had so much fun. We did, I'm sure you the same events, but like Cork in 1988, there was 120 some odd boats.
exactly. No, Laser 2 is one of my favorite boats. I love the Laser 2. It feels like home. Like, it really does.
It's so sad what happened to it. I mean, I guess it just was, from what I remember, it just, people would say they broke down too much.
Correct.
And then, but it's like so crazy for a boat to go from, it happened to the same thing to the Bite, going from more than 100 boats at Cork from one year down to
Nothing.
nothing in like 6 years later.
So
But
I have three kids. They're all sort of grown up now, 19, 23, 25. And as they were, in their young years, and I put them in at junior club at the club, and I taught sailing for 6 years as well at Toronto
okay.
Sailing Canoe Club. So I put them in at junior club. They didn't really love it. Not everyone loves sailing when they first start. And I thought, you know what? I taught sailing for 6 years. I'll just get a dinghy and teach them. And I picked up a 29er. It is
Oh,
not
okay.
the easiest boat to teach kids. So I
No.
would go out and often with two of the three kids, right, with me. So we're pretty packed in the boat. And my brother, he was brilliant. I came in one day and he was like, "How is the swim platform?" I was like, "Swim platform?" He said, "I think you spend more time being capsized than sailing." And I was like, "Yeah, that's about right."
That's funny you say that because immediately I thought of it, the skiff is almost like a diving board,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you say the swim
Oh,
platform.
I've like, so I still have it. I have to sell it actually. I think my 29er days are coming to an end, but maybe next
Okay.
summer when I'm back, I'll get organized on that.
All right, you heard it here first. You got a 29er
I
for sale
do,
somewhere
please,
in
if
the
some,
Toronto area.
yeah, it's in really good shape too. It wasn't used that much.
So tell me about how you got interested in offshore sailing and shorthanded offshore sailing.
So I first got interested in it reading an article out of my club, out of RCYC. So there was an article talking about the Caribbean 600 race and sort of what offshore sailing is and the opportunity to go and join in on a boat with it. And I tried with the boat that the article was written about. They were full, but then I looked up the race and I watched the 2016, still one of my favorite videos, the 2016 Caribbean 600 race start video. I must have watched it 50 times over and over and over. And I was like, wow, like I want to go try this. And so I looked up all the boats that were racing in it and who needed crew still. And again, I'd never done anything like this before. I was in like mom mode and sailing with my kids and taking my husband's clients out sailing. Like that had been the last 15 years of my life, really. And then club racing. I'd never ever done anything like this. And I ended up finding an organization. It was called Girls for Sail. They're no longer sail as in SAIL, not SALE. And so 2017, I went and did the Caribbean 600 race, and it was an absolute blast. Um, and I went and did a
What is that race? Like just to back
Oh
up
yeah,
quickly, what's the Caribbean
okay,
600?
so it's about the third week of February. It's a 600 nautical mile race out of Antigua. You weave it all around the islands. You go up to like St. Kitts and then back all the way down to Guadeloupe and then back up to Antigua. So depending on the boat, it's sort of 2 to 5 days in length. A lot of the pro boats are at it. So, Comanche is there and Fado, like
Wow.
the Ultims are there, and I don't know, some of the Maxis and some of the classic J boats are there. Like it's unbelievable. So
And the conditions are like,
windy,
it's not that, yeah.
25 knots, and it's beautiful Caribbean sailing, right?
Wow.
It's my
That's amazing.
favorite regatta. Um,
All right. So we're 2017. You got on the boat through Girls for Sale.
did the race. It
And
took us
then,
it was a Beneteau 40. Um, and it took us 5 days. We were the second last boat to finish the race in line honors. We were further up once the ratings kicked in, but in line honors we were at the
okay.
very back. We were one of the smallest boats. And I really enjoyed it. And I signed up again in 2018. And 2018, there were massive winds. Half the fleet dropped out. There were 80 boats competing, only 40 finishers that year. Boats were breaking all over the place. So many, torn sails, injuries, masts down, all sorts of things. And we didn't finish the race. We had power issues and we had to withdraw. And it killed me. It killed me as a racer. I was like, surely there is a way we can keep going. But I'm not the skipper, and you listen to the skipper.
Yeah.
The skipper makes the call. It's their call. And
Hmm.
I came back ashore, and I almost flew home because again, my kids were still all at home at the time, and I was like, you know what, I'll just go back. It's a big hassle for the family. It's a lot on them when I'm away, and I didn't. And I stayed, and I walked the docks, and I met other skippers, and I ended up racing in Antigua Race Week, which is April, third week of April, on a boat called Taz. And then there was another a Volvo 60, a Canadian boat, a Volvo 60 that was there, and I sort of learned of it. And during that time, I literally signed up for everything. I signed up for the Clipper race. I signed up for the ARC, which is the Atlantic Rally Cruise, um, in November. And that's when my offshore kicked off.
Okay. Wow. That's it's so inspiring in a way because I've thought about doing the like Newport to Bermuda, and like you looked on crew, just web people looking for crew and stuff like that, and having only had dinghy experience and very little keelboat experience, it's kind of hard to find the right fit. Plus, you need to give. They don't know exactly how long it's going to take. You have to take off 2 weeks to do this and that. In fact, yeah, the last time I did, and someone was like, "Oh, you're going to have to take this 2 weeks off," and even for a 3-day race. Anyway,
Yeah, it adds up. It's hard,
it's good
right?
to see that you can do it. It's good to see that somebody in your position, not just somebody with a lot of experience dinghy racing and small keelboat racing, and is a mom,
Huh.
and
Yeah.
and then you can just do it because you love it that much.
So when I did that year, I signed up. I did the ARC that year, and again, I did it on a Volvo 60, and I ended up working on that boat for about 6 months afterwards. So it wasn't doing the
Okay,
Volvo race; it just was a Volvo 60 that did offshore ocean race training. So whenever I could, I would go and join in and was acted as a maid on it. But I also signed up for the Clipper Around the World race in. And when you sign up for Clipper, you pick your legs. You can do the whole race, or you pick your legs that you want to do. So I signed up for the Southern Ocean leg. I signed up for the Pacific, and then I threw in the Australia to China leg 5, I think it was. Um, but to do the Clipper Around the World race, they give you 4 weeks of training. You pay for
okay,
4 weeks of training. It's all part of it. But
okay.
they teach you how to race, how to sail on really on offshore, but also on boats with really big loads. And in fact, they
I see.
said, and I agree with them, it's almost easier to train someone who has never sailed than to take someone who's sailed a lot, because all the winch handling, everything I had grown up doing is completely wrong on boats with big loads offshore. It is completely wrong. So you have to unlearn and relearn how to do it to make sure you stay safe.
Oh wow. Could you just really quickly go through like one example of that? Like you
Yeah,
were saying,
sure.
like on a 35 you're winching this way, and then you get
Well,
the other
it's
second.
it's all
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm showing my hands. It's all your hand position. I would always grab a rope like this, right? I'd be pulling in like this, thumbs forward.
Right.
And if a line ever goes, your thumb is going to go into the winch. You're going to lose a thumb. So you learn to switch it so it's your pinky, your little finger, so that if your hand goes in, if you lose a pinky, it's really not great, but it's better than losing a thumb. So you learn, and you also learn to really respect um, to really respect the lines. Like every time you let out a line, one hand is always on the winch as you're edging it out with the other hand, because it will literally rip your arm off if it blows.
Wow. Okay. Um, so like let's move on to the Globe 40. How did you get involved with that? It must have been a big series of decisions.
Yeah, it was. I ended up doing it. I was sailing with Clipper when COVID hit. So I was literally on the ocean in January, February, March when COVID hit. We were in the Philippines,
Wow.
which was pretty surreal in itself. Um, and maybe March 20th or something, suddenly the race was canceled. We were supposed to do the Pacific leg, had to fly home. And the following January, um, a teammate from another boat, another Canadian, Ryan Barkey, he and I got talking about racing double-handed and racing offshore because I mean, again, it's not very well known in Canada. Not many people race offshore, and short-handed offshore is a whole other. I don't want to say skill set. It is a bit, but it's its own class. Short-handed is
Mm-hmm.
completely different
Mm-hmm.
than being with a big crew. And we just got talking about it and thought, you know what, we're going to build a campaign and get a boat and start this. So um, that was January 2021. And in July of that year, we went to Maine and I bought the race boat, bought Whiskey Jack, and we started our campaign and we did the Tronjacq Vabre race, which is a double-handed offshore race from France to Martinique. And so we went and did that race together as a team. And that's really when it was like, all right, this is the big leagues now. Like you're with all the pros when you do that.
How many boats in that
There
event?
were, well, there's probably about 85 boats, but it's class 40s, um, ocean 50s, 50-foot trimarans, Ultims. So those are the 100-foot trimarans, and then the Amacas. So
Okay. Wow.
it's
So it's all sort of one design in a sense, that event.
right. So there's four different fleets. It's out of Le Havre, and the
Yeah.
French love sailing. They support the offshore sailing massively. And so at this event, you have to be there, I think, about a week or 10 days before the actual race. And so all the boats are, in the little bay, in the port, and they have floating docks. All the boats are attached to the floating docks. There's tides there. But up on shore, the public can come and watch and be part of it. They have 500,000 visitors for this event. And I had
It's amazing.
never experienced anything like that, with the general public being interested in sailing and it's so encouraged there. It's really terrific.
It's wild because I've heard this before, and more people in France will follow whatever long distance race it is more than there are sailors, right?
Yep.
So like 3 in 5 French people will check in on the the Vendée Globe or whatever, but that's not. There's fewer sailors than that. So what do you think it is about offshore racing and the French?
Um,
that
there's a couple factors. One is the French government encourages companies to sponsor. I don't know if it's all sports, but certainly sailing. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
many of the French boats have businesses sponsoring them. So it truly becomes a business, because a class 40 boat, my class 40 boat, it's one of the older ones, from 2013, 14. When I bought it used, it's $250,000. So I put my own savings into it, bought the boat. Class 40s have evolved so much in the last 8 years, a little bit like International 14s did, where the technology and the advancements are just
Yeah.
changing. If you physically look at the boat, my boat has, a typical bow. It's quite a sharp bow. And the new boats, they all have the scow bow design, which is the very, very wide design.
Right. Right. Yeah.
They're probably a couple knots faster overall. But the new boats are $1 million. How
Yeah.
many people have $1 million to spend on a boat? And that's just to buy the boat. Forget about, get your sales. But every race, it's expensive. So the French government really supports it. But the other thing is, um, because I was in France quite a bit before the race, and then after the races, I was working doing the maintenance on Whiskey Jack. I saw that they really support outdoor sports and children.
Oh, wow.
So all the schools, I was in this tiny little bay, tiny little bay, and every single day, just beside where my boat was, they had dinghies. Every single day, morning and afternoon, the local schools came. Every single week, the kids had half a day of outside sports um, that the government supported. So the kids are all getting the opportunity to sail or to go kayaking or canoeing and to try the sport out. So, you don't know you like it until you try it, right?
Yeah, so definitely matters that that there is an opportunity that people get, access to the water and that kind of stuff. But there is something more, like you say, or that the general public is interested in the events. What is it about offshore sailing that I think it has something to do with the relatability? Not that everyone's been out sailing in the middle of the ocean, but they can relate to, oh, this person's sail ripped and they had to climb the mast in the middle of the ocean, versus, oh, this person is foiling at 18 knots.
Correct. And it's going to only grow, I think, because communication is now becoming easier. And even from when I did my race to now, Starlink is made it affordable, and it means you can share videos easily. And those moments when, yeah, you're right. How many times do we go up the mast around the world? I had my teammates went up more than I did, but on leg 2, 8 times I
Oh my God!
put my teammate up the mast. Only 3 times were we successful. Like, it was so rough. We had to go up the mast,
Holy
and he would
fuck!
go up and it would have to come down. On leg 3, oh, Geronimo was on leg 3. We were leading the race. We were dousing the spinnaker, got a wrap. We were dousing it to be ahead of, yeah, we knew the winds were going to build. And we're like, before we get into the stronger winds, let's put the smaller spinnaker up. Trying to be,
Where are you? Where?
we were near Amsterdam Island, so the Indian Southern Ocean. Amsterdam Island
Okay.
is this tiny, it's literally a rocky outcrop. And we were coming towards it. We got the spinnaker wrap, and we're trying. We got it unwrapped down to a single wrap twice, and then wrapped again. We spent 36 hours to get the spinnaker down. And
Oh my God!
Geronimo went up. We ended up sailing north for about 24 hours to try and get out of the low, to try and get into less winds. And Geronimo went up the mast, my teammate, in 25 knots of wind, 5-meter waves. And he held on. The mast, the boat is whatever doing this, but when you're on the mast,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing this, right? You're trying, and so he's holding on, and no joke. So the spinnaker's around the forestay with his feet. So he's holding on with his arms, you see, with
Uh-huh.
his feet. He is untying the knots, the spinnaker around the forestay. It was unbelievable, unbelievable.
Like literally a knot. He was like untying a bowline with his feet.
Correct, correct. It just
All right, all these kids out there that I've told them that a bowline will never come untied, even if you put 2,000 pounds of pressure on it. It's true.
no. Well, this was just
And you
a
can still
sail.
untie
Like,
it.
this is just a sail around the forestay, around and around and around. And that, I don't know. Like, I did have a lot of sails tear. I wish I had new sails. I had them. I will say this to my defense. I went to 2 different sail offs before the race. I had all the sails inspected, told them I was doing the race, asked if they needed repairs, if I needed new sails, and they're like, "You're good to go, good to go." I did have more sails tear than should have, because night, when that spinnaker wrapped, and we'd spent like, I don't know, a couple hours. It's now nighttime, right? And literally we're coming up to Amsterdam Island, and I'm trying to avoid the island. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the ocean. I cannot believe I have land coming up as we have a spinnaker wrap, and the wind is building, and it's night. But we we had a little crash dive moment, and our the mainsail tore in half, leached to luff.
Oh, geez.
So,
This is while you have the wrap.
correct, correct. And so we had to drop the sail down to our fourth reef, and we sailed north for 24 hours with our spinnaker. So now we don't have a head sail because it's around the spinnakers around the forestay. We put up our staysail, we had that
Right.
going. And our main is only at a fourth reef. And we sailed for like 24 hours, continuously trying to untangle the sail. We did get it, the spinnaker down. It was a little bit torn, but I had it repaired in Auckland and I used it for the rest of the race. So, yeah.
But so 36 hours, did you get to sleep in that
We
time?
did,
Or were you
yeah. No,
trying to
we
get
did.
okay.
So we spent maybe 2, 3 hours at the beginning trying to get it down, and then we literally
Uh-huh.
went below deck and like collapsed because I mean anyone that's been on the bow of the boat fighting to get a spinnaker down, these are big sails, big sails. Class 40, they're massive, like how big the sail area is, and you're only two people, right? Um, we went below deck, and Toronto and I, we literally collapsed on the floor. And I had a message that had come in from the race management that said, you're going to be the closest boat to Amsterdam Island. And they said scientists go there, they get dropped off, they're there for 6 months at a time, they have barely any communication. They would love to have a VHF radio chat with you.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I wrote to race management. I said, listen, I'd love to, but I said, I'm like passed out on the floor. I said, we've had a spinnaker wrap. And as soon as they heard that, they said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I felt terrible that I didn't call these scientists that are sort of, we were flat out exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, okay, let's back up a little bit. You bought your boat, Whiskey
Yeah.
Jack, in Maine. Tell me first about the Open 40. Is that like a one design class or
So the class 40, it's an evolving one design class. And I have to say, they've changed a lot since they first came out. Um, a lot. The very first ones honestly look like a Beneteau cruising boat almost. Like it's and with a nice decent cabin below and a stove even. And my
uh-huh.
boat, below deck, there is nothing, nothing. Like the engine compartment, as soon as you go into the cabin, there's a box there around the engine. There's a nav station, which is only the computer, the screens. Um, Mine is on a pivoting board. I don't have a seat for it. There are no bunks below. There is no floor. What you're standing on is the bottom of the boat. There's no floorboards on top of that. Um,
Okay.
there's nothing. So the stove I have is a jet boil. Do you know a jet boil? So
No.
it's a very simple like camp stove. So you boil water.
Okay.
So I had freeze dried meals for 9 months because all we could do was boil water and pour it into our package of food, and that was your meal. Um,
How do you sit at the nav table if there's no seat?
I sat
Cross-legged?
on, yeah, we sat on the floor I had a bean bag. I had one bean bag chair. So we would sit on that. And then your sails, um, again, you're really pushing it. Like we're racing hard when we're doing this. So your sails, it's called a stack of sails. And every time you tack or drive the boat, you move the stack to the other side. You move all of your equipment to the other side. So often we would have sails on the bottom of the boats. You'd be sitting on that at the nav station. And,
Ah, I see.
or if I was wet, I would be sitting on a box because I didn't want to make all the cloth wet. Um,
Ah.
but it was rough enough. It's pretty funny if I look at my messages, emails home. I stopped using capitals because when I was typing, because I had to hold on with my thumbs. Like it's so violent on the boat that my thumbs would be holding on to the little tiny table and I could type with my fingers. But capitals were like not even, they're forgotten. They were completely. So it's rough. Uh,
Um, so just to back up, so Whiskey Jack you bought in Maine, was that the name of the boat when you
no,
bought it?
no, it was called Toothface before. Tooth,
Okay,
yeah.
so where did the name come from?
It's a name Ryan and I had worked on. We took a little while. We were trying to come up with something Canadian, and somehow Grey J came up, which is also a whiskey jack. It's another name for whiskey jack. And no one knows this, but a whiskey jack is the national bird of Canada. Yeah,
No.
everyone thinks it's the loon or Canada goose or whiskey jack. It is a bird that is in every single province and territory. And for the First Nations, it is seen as sort of a good luck symbol. And when, I guess, traditionally the stories go that if they would see it, it was a sign, and that was how they knew their way home. So my thought
Oh,
was, listen, on the ocean, I want to be leading the others across the finish line. I want to be leading them home. So we went with Whiskey
that's
Jack.
great. I didn't know that at all. I didn't even know it was a bird. Everybody out there, whiskey jack is the national bird of Canada. So the Globe 40 comes around. You started in Morocco. Um, Tell me about. I mean, I know there were big things happen in different legs, but just tell me about the start and then some of the stories. Yeah, tell me about the start, and then we can go on the different legs and what happened.
Start was Gary and I, and there's a huge amount, I have to say, mentally and emotionally, and even at the end of the race, probably 2 nights before a race starts, I'm no longer sleeping. My brain is spinning like, what else should I have done? What else can I prepare for the boat? I'm not nervous for racing or being on the ocean, but it's always like, can I have done more? Is there anything else I should have done? The morning of the race, I can't even eat. Like my stomach's in butterflies. And it's intense because there's like TV cameras or interviews, and I'm like, I just want to start. I just want to start. And then it's easy. Sailing is easy. And so we headed out, and it's a big event. It's a world race, right? The beginning of a world race. And Gary and I trained together. We both did biomedical engineering as master's degrees. So I met him, and we had trained on my 14 and sailed a whole bunch together. He was on the Alberta team when I was on the Ontario team. We knew how to race. We had trained together for a few months on Whiskey Jack. So we head out for the race start and start the race just fine. Not a brilliant start, but fine. And they had a little inshore course. So, around the triangle. And you were tacking up to the windward mark. And we were on Port Tack. And we knew there were boats coming along yeah, there are boats coming along in Port Tuck underneath us. We knew we had to tack to get up to the windward mark. And we're sort of looking and we're like, we don't know if we'll cross or not cross, but we'll be on starboard. We tack, call out starboard. And again, we're only two people. Sails are big. I'm helming. Poor Gary's grinding away at everything, moving the traveler, doing everything. We get the sails part way in, and he looks and he's like, they're still on port. Looks like we're like they're going to have to duck. They're going to have to do something. We're too close. Call out starboard again. And Gary watches and he's like, yeah, they're ducking. So we continue trimming the sails and we're like, okay, where are they? Like, if they're ducking us, we're going to start to see them. And he looks again. They haven't ducked. And we're now on a collision course. I quickly try and tack, not in time, and we collide. We got hit by a port tack boat. They hit us at the.
I haven't taken a breath here in about 30 seconds.
Oh
So
my God, what a nightmare! They hit us at the shroud. They bounced down the port side of our boat. I had like dings and yeah, it wasn't pretty. And we flip, and I was in shock, and I was like, I spoke to race management, and I said, listen, I've never been in a collision before, never. I mean, laser twos, you might brush against one another. I've never had
yeah,
nothing like this. And what happened, as it turned out, was first off, we're shorthanded, so you don't have someone at the bow watching. Um, and you don't, it's only the two of you can only manage so much. But what had happened was on the other boat, the it was a pro sailor with the owner, and the pro sailor had put the boat on autopilot and had gone
oh,
below deck to check something on navigation. So when Gary saw the boat do a little bit of a dip, it was just autopilot doing a little,
Oh, wow.
and it's like, okay, terrible, terrible moment, like terrible, terrible moment. Anyway, we checked our boat out. I had a little hole at the back, but we kept sailing, and I had it repaired when we got to Cape Verde. Uh, it was a yeah, that was a start. It's not my happiest moment by any means.
Well, just explain to me again. So the inshore was part of the start that led
Correct.
to the offshore. So
Yes.
you just did a little
We did a
couple of
little,
triangles
we
and
did a
then you
couple of
leave.
triangles, and then we left. And it's like, because they wanted to make it so that people could see it, or I don't know, they could get, I'm not sure. They changed it. Um, it was really, really unfortunate. And the other skipper,
Yeah.
really lovely Frenchman. I'd had dinner with him the night before, like, just felt awful, awful that it
Oh
happened.
God.
Um, what do you do? We were okay. We kept racing. Like, you just keep going. So,
Right.
uh,
Wow. So then, so you got it. You finished leg one. How are you feeling?
you know what? Good. We didn't do quite as well as we wanted. We had, unfortunately, my the pulpit. My boat, not all of them are quite the same. My boat it's got the bowsprit. They all have a bowsprit, and my
Hmm.
bowsprit is um, can tack or jibe. I can angle it, which is great. It can give me an advantage if you're
Oh
really
yeah.
quite downwind. But it sort of was tied to um, part of its reinforcement was tied into the pulpit, and the bolt within the pulpit sheared on the inside, so the pulpit came off. So then the bowsprit couldn't be used because it no longer had that securing point. So the last 2 days of that leg, we could no longer fly spinnaker because
Oh.
we couldn't use our bowsprit. So we were sixth in that race, um, but it was 10 days. It was again offshore. You get through what you get through when you keep pushing, right? Um,
Right.
we had, I think,
So
sorry, I was going to say, I think in those 10
yeah.
days, we probably had maybe six absolute wipeouts. Boat absolutely flat on its side. And that was just a little taste of what was to come.
So on leg three is the leg that we just talked about where you had the 36-hour spinnaker wrap.
Yes, yes, that's exactly it. And leg two was Cape Verde to Mauritius. So around Cape Hope, it was 36 days long, that race. On day four, my head sail, I have two head sails, but my main head sail, like a Genoa, it's called the J1, um, tore. So I didn't have my biggest head sail, and we had 10 days of upwind sailing. And
Oh.
so we were in last place, and in that leg, I ended up with five torn sails. Um, and so we were
Wow.
racing. We had a mainsail, my storm sail, and one spinnaker. That's all I had for much of that race. And I said to race management, I sort of put a dare out to myself. I said, if I finish on the podium, I will wear my sail to the award ceremony. And sure enough, we kept pushing and racing. We came third that leg. So I took the top part of my torn head sail, and they had a sailmaker in Mauritius, and I went to him the day of the awards, and I was like, I need you to help me. And he cut it and he sewed it in place, and I went to the award ceremony wearing my head sail as a skirt. So
That's awesome. Do you still have it?
I do indeed. Yeah, I'll never get rid of that. I'm like, you got to make the best of it somehow, honestly.
Right. Right. And then so I've written on leg five, you had the bowsprit snapped.
Oh, it did. Yes, it did. I've had almost everything happen except I've not lost a mast, knock on wood, and I have not had any sinking, any issues. But leg five, the bowsprit snapped in half, and we jury rigged it a bit. We put a bucket on the broken bit that was remaining, the little part that was remaining. And again, it's a carbon bowsprit, super strong, but it snapped.
Hmm.
And and so we managed to jury rig and get a spinnaker up sort of. We could fly Spinnaker, but not fully. And we also had our port rudder. We hit a UFO, which is unidentified floating object, and
Uh-huh.
it took a little chip out of the rudder, and so my port rudder no longer worked properly. So it meant for probably 2 weeks of that leg, which is going around Cape Horn, on port tack, we were fine because the starboard rudder was working. And on
Uh-huh.
starboard tack, I could only sail the boat flat because if I heeled at all and my starboard rudder came out, which was my only working rudder, we would wipe out because the port rudder wasn't working.
Oh, geez.
So Cape,
How did you keep the boat flat?
you're a little sails are eased more, travelers down. We have ballast tanks on the boat, so they were full more often than they should have
Oh,
been.
okay.
But it meant our Cape Horn rounding was, on only one working rudder.
Jeez. And I did one of the Instagram posts I saw. You were trying to douse one of the head sails, but then your J1 came, or your code red came out, or the biggest sail came out.
I don't know if this is the story you're saying on leg 6. So again, every start, pretty much I was with a new teammate. So I had plans to do the whole race with one. My original one couldn't do the race, and he did leg 1 with me. I had someone for leg 2, and then I had someone for leg 3 onwards. And on leg 2 around Cape Hope, my teammate for leg 3 onwards wrote me and said, "I'm really, really sorry. And he's a pro sailor, he's a great guy. And he said, I got the job of a lifetime. I can't do the race with you." And I was like, I mean, I'm already in the Southern Ocean and managing. I've got 5 torn sails. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even know if I'm going to make the next leg. So he did leg 3. And then I found someone for leg 4 who didn't know if he could do leg 4. I pieced it together. So 6 out of 8 starts, I had a brand new teammate with me. And leg 6 with Tom, it was just, new to the boat little moment. And he let off the wrong line. And so we had, I forget what we had out. We had our J1 and our J2, and he accidentally let off the furler line. So now we had our code 0 out, 20 knots of wind, and I now had 3 head sails out as we're like flying along in this.
Wow. One other thing that I had in your bio was having to dodge pirates.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that true?
yeah, that was leg 2. So that was Cape Verdes around to Mauritius. And if you look at a world, if you look at a globe, when you do that loop, you sort of go straight south, but Africa sort of cuts east, like it cuts inwards, and South America also cuts east and sort of comes out. So when you do that south part of the route, you actually come quite close to Brazil. So somewhere off of Brazil, in the middle of the night, was on watch, and I could see on the radar a boat was parallel to us, about 8 miles out, and just beside us, going parallel. And then they suddenly turned and they came directly at us. And within like 15 minutes, they were right at us. And I woke up my teammate and I was like, I have no idea what's going on, but we got a boat coming right for us.
Oh,
And
wow.
they had massive big lights. They came with like 50 meters of us. They had shut off their AIS, their automatic identification system. So it wasn't sort of, I don't know, I mean, it wasn't the Coast Guard, it wasn't anything. Big lights, they followed us for probably half an hour and then they peeled
Wow.
away. And it was just like, we shut everything off because we're like, we have no idea what's going on. So we shut off our lights. I don't know if I shut off the AIS, I can't remember. But I have to say, I honestly was like, I don't know what to do. Like, that for me was the scariest moment of the entire race. And I had big storms,
Wow.
I had things break, I had so many things break and go wrong. That was the scariest moment because I was like, I don't know what their intention is. And, we're just a sailboat. Like, we have nothing they want, other than maybe if it's us and ransom or whatever. But after about 20 minutes, half an hour, they finally stopped following us and peeled off and went back into the night.
God. Yeah, tell me about some of the positive, like we've been through a lot of the things that you were able to overcome. But you also were super fast in some legs, like you guys did the best 24-hour.
Yeah, we did. We set 3 speed records. So on the first leg, on day 2 of the race, I set the speed record for the first leg, which was brilliant. You know, Gary and I were just sailing our best. And to know that we set the speed record, I think it was 301 nautical miles, 301.8. And I have to say on leg 2 we were beaten, but it was 302 nautical miles. Like we were just barely beaten. And when I was sailing with Michael Reiking on that leg off of South Africa, huge currents, all sorts of currents. And we were flying along and we were only doing 12 knots over the ground, but we had 5 knots of current against us. If I'd had either no current or the current with us, you know, we could have been doing 22 knots, which would have been an absolute record. But on leg 7 was my first race start with the same teammate. So we started that leg with Tom. We'd already raced, 4 weeks together by that point. And I have to say, I mean, there's some aspects of my boat I really, really know how to race her fast. And we set the speed record for the entire race that leg, and it was 343 miles. So went from 302 to 303, or 301 to 302. And I think the next closest was 314. And the record I set was 343. So, much, much faster. So that was really rewarding. Like I had a lot of challenges in the race, and I now know and that sort of throw anything at me and I'll take it on. And you have no choice. You're out there. You're 2,000 miles out. If something goes wrong, what else can you do other than you have to fix it and you keep going? But it was really rewarding to win that leg after all the challenges, for sure.
So, tell me about crossing the line in France at the very end of the event. What was that like?
Oh, I'm gonna cry if I just think about it. I'll be really honest. Leading up to the finish, I didn't know how I was going to feel because I was frustrated. I didn't do better overall, leg by leg, and I replaced a bunch of sails. And when you replace sails, you can have 3 sails replacements, and after that you get a time penalty. So I had on leg 5, I was line honors 4th, but I had a time penalty that put me to 5th. And I had that a couple times in the race where I not only was penalized because my sails broke and I sailed slower, but then in the next leg I had a time penalty applied because I had gotten the new sails. So it set me back twice. The final leg, I only had to beat 1 boat to be 4th overall, which, listen, I'm a racer. I really, really wanted to be on the podium every leg. And I'm not trying to be naive or brash saying that. I'm just a racer. The guys I raced against were brilliant sailors. So really, I should just be happy I was racing. Forget about having those high levels. I only had to beat this one other boat to move up a spot. And I had issues with my rudder and the bearing, and we had to do a quick stop in Guadeloupe, repair the bearing, and then we joined in back into the race. But that set us back, so we finished behind this other boat. So coming up to the finish, I really, maybe a week ahead of time, I really wondered if I was going to feel proud as I crossed it, or if I was going to be frustrated because I really am such a racer. But the day before the race end, I'd sort of processed it, I guess, and was like, you know what, I've come through a lot. Just making it to the start line for me, each leg was huge. And think about starting a race where you're going offshore for maybe a month, and you're with someone brand new to the boat, and I would be explaining to them, all right, this is how we do a double head attack on my boat, and this is how the navigation works, and I was going through that every single leg, whereas the other teams were set teams. So at the actual finish, as we came up to it, there were 3 different ribs that came out. So the media boat came out with the drone overhead to get the camera shots. And then one boat had family and friends. So I had two friends of mine, Christina and Christine. Christine was my 470 teammate, the girl that I met my first day of junior club that I befriended. She came to it. My sister flew out and came to it, and my daughter came to it. So it was like so emotional to see them all. You know, my daughter I'd only seen for a couple days at Christmas, and then really I had been gone for 9 months for the race, but honestly for the better part of 2 years with all my campaigning and training for it. It was huge. And then the third boat had skippers. The other skippers came out on a rib to see me finish. And yeah, I mean, not many Canadians have raced around the world. And even fewer have done it shorthanded. So I was really, yeah, it really did touch me. Like, I was really honored.
Well, I'm almost crying here. But when you said I didn't know if I was going to feel frustrated or proud, and I think every racing sailor probably has a similar feeling. Like, you know, am I going to, the whole process versus performance thing. Like, oh, I might have, I'm like way better at sailing downwind and waves after this regatta, but I came second last. So was this a good experience? But yeah, you tell me, you said didn't know if you were going to feel frustrated or proud. And how did it feel when you actually crossed the line?
Oh, I really was proud. I was so proud. And to add to it, probably 2 weeks before the race finish, the race management reached out to us all and said, hey, we need to plan the award ceremony. We're looking at, it was Sunday. And at that time, my routing showed I would get there Thursday. And I was like, great, Sunday seems okay. And I'm like, I'm 2 weeks out, but, and I was like, all right, Thursday, probably to be Friday. And I'm like, as an offshore sailor, I better plan on Saturday. You never get there when you think.
Right.
And maybe a week before the finish, I wasn't going to finish until Wednesday or Thursday the following week. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I cannot believe I'm not even going to finish in time to go to the award ceremony. And my daughter had taken time off work and friends were flying in, and I was so frustrated that I was not going to make it. So we pushed it and we set another speed record on that leg. So I was like, I am not missing the award ceremony. Like, we are gunning it. And so we did. We set and that was another mass climb on that leg. I had a head sail tear. We got caught we knew the winds were going to pick up they were supposed to pick up to 30 knots, and it went from like 25 knots to 48 knots, gusting to 60 in like
Jesus.
2 minutes. And we spent the next maybe 6 hours in these massive winds and huge waves. We probably broached 50 times. Like, I think we spent more time on our side than we did, not quite, but we were just and our head sail tore. It did tear. And the head sails, the J1, which the head sail does like a Genoa, it's on the forestay. It's not on a halyard. They're lashed in place. So when the sail tears, the only way to get it down is to go up the mast and cut the lashings.
Oh, I see.
So we, a day later, we had the sail. It had torn. It tore. We had we had furled it, but it had battens, leech battens, and in the wind they were luffing a little bit, and it tore from the batten all the way to the luff. So now the sail's fluttering away the whole time, fluttering. Fluttering's kind. It was much worse than that. And the wind dropped a little bit, but we knew there was another low coming, like another massive low. And of course, the whole rig and your forestay, it's all shaking because you've got this sail up there that's luffing away. And so in 25 knots of wind and 5-meter waves, I was up the mast, cutting the lashing to drop this sail. It's terrifying, but I knew if I didn't get it down, I would risk losing the rig because it could only take so much, right?
Right. Well, that's a good moment to push into one of my regular segments, which is Hijack the Guest. And that's where I ask my guest something that I'm having an issue with myself and my own sailing. And one thing that I have a hard time with is I grew up, my dad had a CNC 35 and we used to sail that a little bit. But I've never really gotten into keelboat sailing, and I've never ever wanted to own one. And that's because I'm afraid of boat repair, essentially. One thing is I never went up the mast of that. My brothers and sisters went up the mast, but I was just the youngest and I never did it. I'm scared of it. I'm even scared at the top of a J24 mast. But anyway, so that's something that you have accomplished, up the mast in the middle of the ocean. But just in general, if you somebody who's like afraid of teak, for example,
Okay,
what
that's
would
it.
you say
Yeah.
for someone like that?
Well, so there's two parts here. I was terrified of heights. And when I got my race boat, when I was racing with Ryan, he went up the mast a couple times, he'd go up the mast. And then when I started with Gary, we're chatting away about it. And Gary's a diver. I also don't like diving very much. And so we had a little deal, and it's like, if something goes wrong, I said, I'll go up the mast if you'll go under the boat. It's a 10-foot keel, so it's not a small thing to go down to the keel if you have to clear something. So I made that deal with him. But I honestly, I have a Dufour 34 in Toronto, a sailboat. And the first time I went up that mast, oh my God, like that, the panic, like, and even now on my race boat, I can do it, but there's moments where that absolute panic sets in, and you're trying to steady yourself. As far as being afraid and the maintenance on the boat, listen, I'm an engineer, and I sort of love learning things, and I don't mind asking questions, and I don't mind saying I don't know, and I actually enjoy that with the offshore. I've had to learn so much about the boat. I don't have any teak on my race boat, but I do on my Dufour. And I came back to Toronto having funded this all. My sponsor never kicked in the end, so I paid for the entire race out of my own savings. And I came back to Toronto and I was like, oh, I need a job. I need to make some money. And I ended up working all summer refinishing teak. So I know teak perfectly. Ask me anything on teak, I've learned now. I think the sailing community is really friendly and helpful. And you don't have to know it all. And it's okay. You go and ask a neighbor. You even go ask the boatyard or the marine services. Yeah, you can pay them to do it, but you can also just say, can you give me advice? Like, what do you suggest for this? They'll always help. People are so, so helpful. Like, I went around the world. I didn't know everything on my boat. I had, obviously I had batteries, and I had my engine, and I had a solar system, I had a hydro generator, all my sails. I had a lot of things break down at different times. I lost communication 5 times in the Southern Ocean. Wind instruments blew off 5 times, and so many things go wrong. And I would write into race management, or I would write into the couple contacts and be like, okay, I don't know that much about this system. Can you give me some hints on how I troubleshoot this? And learn and grow, and you can always ask for help. So
That's excellent advice. All right, so now comes my 3 big questions section.
there we go. Should I
which
brace
is-
myself?
First,
Yeah.
first one is, what do you love about sailing?
Oh, everything. Honestly, everything. I would wake up every day on the ocean, and I had low moments, and I had tougher time than many people. And again, I'm a mom, and I didn't see my kids for 6 months. Like, I really emotionally had hard times. But literally every start of the day, when I would go on shift, and I would step into the cockpit and look at the boat racing across the waves, and I was just like in awe and grateful, and like, look at this, and I'd look around, and I'm like, this is my office, 360-degree view, this is my office. I'm really lucky for that. I really do love everything. I love the physics of it. I love double-handed. The boat is sailing by autopilot a lot. Doesn't mean I'm down below reading a book. I'm not. I took a book. I read 2 chapters in 9 months, and I'm an avid reader. That was all I got. You're constantly working, and autopilot might be on, but then I'm on the winch grinding the spinnaker in and out, in and out, in and out, like playing it the whole time. There's nothing casual when you're sailing shorthanded. But I appreciate shorthanded sailing because you see a boat can sail really well on its own. Like, I think that's amazing.
It wants to go the way it wants to go. Like that's sometimes I hear coaches saying, just let the boat go where it wants to go.
So you know what? Again, I learned, obviously, you learn a lot, but if your autopilot's like struggling, almost every time it's because your sails are set wrong. Do you know what I mean? So you realize, all right, before I would start tweaking the autopilot settings, I would first look at the sails and be like, hang on, do I need to change this? And I would also learn from the autopilot. I would put it on and look at the sails, and I'd play the sails a bit and see I was learning because the boat was sailing, and I'm watching the sails as I'm playing it. It was really cool to do that.
That is cool. So the second big question is, what are you most proud of in your sailing career?
Oh, this race. 100% this race. I had only had my boat for 10 months before the race. I was pretty new to double-handed sailing, but I did check myself, and then I was like, I don't want to wait another year. I don't want to wait whatever. I'm not young, and I keep trying to. I just wrote an article for Kwasin, for my club newsletter again, to just say, just go try offshore sailing. Just go try it. Like, or go join a rally, go join something. Just go and have a different experience. There's so much in sailing we can all enjoy. It doesn't just have to be around the islands.
I'll move on to the next question, which is kind of jibing with what you're saying right now, which is, what kind of advice would you give to sailors who want to develop as offshore sailors or just want to become better sailors? Or, what kind of advice do you have for sailors?
Listen, just go try an event. And literally my very first event, the Caribbean 600, I knew nothing. And I looked up the boats, and any of the offshore boats, not any of them, but many of the offshore boats have spots for crew to join in. I'll say honestly, you probably pay your way because offshore is not cheap. If I look at the cost of my sails, which is probably $100,000, and the sails will last once around the world, say, it's probably every 1,000 miles is like $3,000 in wear and tear on the sails and depreciation. So if you go to do an event and they ask you to pay $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 to be a crew on the event, I have to say the organization's they're not really making money. They're just covering their costs. And you can join a boat as the most inexperienced person. I've raced with so many people that are literally, they just know how to hold a sheet, but they've tried it. And they get out there and come on, we all sail. We all know on a boat, there's so many roles you can play, right? You can be helming, you can be foredeck, or you can be holding a line or clearing a sheet, and you're still out there. So just go and try it.
And what's next for Melodie Schaffer?
Next is, well, I will say honestly, I finished this race and I was burnt out, mentally, emotionally, physically fried. I had managed so much on my own. I didn't have a shore team. Not really. At every stopover, it was me working on the boat with my old teammate, and then sometimes a couple days on my own, and I'd look at the other boats with a hub of people, and I'd be trying to get through it all. So the stress of managing all it was huge. And I know speaking with the other skippers, probably just in the last couple of months, they've all started saying, all right, they found their footing again, like starting to feel whole again. I think I'm at about 50% of myself. So it's taken time to, it really was exhausting. You're sleep deprived as you race, but on shore you're working 14-hour days, and the stress you carry is huge. My goal is to go and do the race again with steady teammates. It can be plural, but planned and steady teammates, new sails. So if a sail blows, it blows.
Yeah.
I'd say 90% of my sail, the times the sails tore, I would have done the exact same thing again. I was never pushing it to that point where I'm like, well, that was a bit stupid. It was bad luck. It was whatever had happened. I want to go race again where I feel like I'm at the start line on equal footing with everyone. I really want that. And I love my boat. Whiskey Jack sails like a dinghy. She sails like an international 14. When the spinnaker's
Uh-huh.
flying and I'm pushing her and you're feeling that edge and you're like going on the edge, it's exactly the same as being on a 29er or a 14 when you're right on the edge of control. It's absolutely amazing. And I love my boat. I have 6 winches in the cockpit, and I'm this tiny little person. But with all the winches, I can manage it all. And I love the fact I can sail my boat on my own. When you sail double-handed, much of the time you're alone on deck. Your teammate is below deck, repairing something, navigation, sleeping, eating, whatever. You're alone on deck. And I love the fact that I can be in the cockpit and sailing her and enjoying it all.
That's amazing. Melodie Schaffer, thank you so much for your time and coming on the podcast. I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been such a treat to speak about it. Thank you very, very much, David. I love this. Thank you.
Okay, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I like to say, have fun, make friends, sail fast. I'll see you on the water.
I love that.
Oh, good. I can't take credit for that. I heard it from Mariah Millen, who heard it from somebody else.